Welcome to this week's episode of Water Be Wednesday. I am so thrilled to be here with Rachel Lambert, who is the founder and CEO of Braincode Centers. And I'm going to let Rachel dive in to talk a little bit about what that is, because your mind is about to be blown, no pun intended. So can you tell us a little bit about Braincode Centers?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. We've talked about doing this for months now, so it's exciting to finally join. Braincode Centers is a brain mapping and neurofeedback company, so we specialize in the actual brain mapping and neurofeedback. We do incorporate the counseling component to it, but that really is what our specialty is. Brain mapping is a way to measure the electrical activity of your brain. And what we're really passionate about is actually measuring the organ that we're treating. So we were chatting about this a little bit before this, but if you guys think about truly in the field of clinical mental health, no one is addressing what the brain is doing. But if you go to any other doctor, you have a problem with your knee, or you're pregnant and you're going to look at your belly, the little baby in your belly, you are going to use a measuring tool to see what's going on. And that's what we're not doing. We're only just looking at people's symptoms and then prescribing meds or saying, go speak with a counselor, and you're totally missing the organ that is in the control seat in the first place.
It's so interesting. So when we first met, I mean, obviously Rachel is so dynamic and one of those people that you're like, okay, you are cool, I want to hang out with you. But also like the idea of this business is fascinating to me, because no one, you think idea of like having a brain scan or something, you're thinking like a giant MRI machine or something like this, but it's really nothing like that. I've watched your videos on, I have not had my brain scanned yet. So, it's on the list.
We just got equipment for Tulsa, so she'll come in.
So I'm just so intrigued, like how it was so fascinating to me as a business and what we can discover. And you do a lot of work with athletes, people with depression, anxiety. So like, talk to me, like what does that all look like? How do you look at a scan and say, okay, that's depression, that's anxiety? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so there's research-based clinical patterns for every symptom that people are struggling with, right? So, depression, anxiety, trauma, PTSD, and we know this based off of the location, right? So there's different locations in the brain that control different components for how we operate. There's also different brainwave frequencies that we know have a specific role, right? There's a brainwave called theta, and its entire job is to get us to feel calm. There's also a brainwave called high beta, and it's basically our defense mechanism brainwave. And so when there's too much of it, right, you might be more
anxious, maybe.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, we put this puzzle piece together of the different patterns and show people on the picture, what exactly is going on. A lot of people will say, gosh, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but I also am kind of anxious, and I don't know if I really am ADHD, but it seems to fit. And it's like, why are we guessing, right? Why don't we just actually go to the root and go to the why and get the answers from information from our brain? So that, that's where those patterns are coming from.
That is so cool. And so what happens? So let's say, we're in there and I say, I can't focus. I think I might have ADHD. You scan and you go, okay, yeah, you do. Then what's the next step?
Yeah, so that's where the actual neurofeedback comes in. And so this is where it's so simplistic that people tend to overanalyze the simplicity of it. But we are retraining the brain's pathways based off of operant conditioning or reward. So it's under the umbrella of behaviorism. I always talk about, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening have probably heard of Pavlov and
I was just going to say that.
Classical conditioning.
It's also about conditioning your husband. Always tell me to do a good job with the dishes.
Good job. Good job. It does work over time, but you got to be consistent with the reinforcement. So that really is where it comes in though, right? We're reinforcing the brain. In our setting, we're doing it through auditory and visual feedback to reteach the brain something optimal instead of something dysfunctional. It's truly actually how you guys all learned how to walk, how everyone learns English or another language, how you learned how to drive a car, play a video game. You don't get direction manuals for that. At least I hope not. You figure it out.
Right.
And that's what the brain's really good at, is figuring things out. And so we teach it how to figure out how to be calm, figure out how to sleep, figure out how to not have migraines. And we do that over time through the feedback.
That is so, it's like, that is just, I don't know, just the coolest thing. And I don't know, there's all these self-help books out there and all these other things that we've probably spent millions of dollars on to billions of dollars on to fix. And it's something could be so simple versus us beating the crap out of ourselves to fix it. Every time you picked up a cookie, you were like, oh my God, start over again. But that's fat. That's like, I think it's just the coolest thing. How did you dive into this?
Yeah, so I, truly, mine is from a personal experience. I grew up in a very loving and stable home, and I didn't have a lot of trauma, which I'm so thankful, truly for that. But I just was always like a wild child, not really a rule follower, tend to get myself in quite a bit of trouble quite often. But it became like beyond just regular teenage rebellion. My parents were like, what in God's name is wrong with your daughter? Like, oh my gosh.
She's possessed.
Yeah, and so I think that was after I'm pretty open, but after I had gotten out of jail for the second time of doing basically the exact same thing, my parents were like, what is wrong with our 15-year-old? Like, this is not normal. And I was really stubborn. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go get on meds. And so they're like, we got to figure out something for her. So they ended up finding out about neurofeedback. And at that point, I was living in Denver, and I actually went out to Dallas to do the treatment or the feedback that I now offer. And it really did completely change my life. So I started off with that same brain map, and essentially my frontal lobe was like a Ferrari with no brakes. I was going 100 miles an hour as this little 15-year-old.
Of course.
So I'm burning off all this excess energy in really self-destructive ways. And that's not going to be good long-term for anybody. So, my parents, it really was more of a pattern for bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder truly is a life sentence of medication management. That's what people do. It was within a week, my mom said, even over the phone, she's like, I felt like I had my daughter back. Like, your voice was different.
That's crazy.
You were just different. You were stable. You were grounded. And I don't even think I really knew that at that point. It was looking back and reflecting on the experience. I changed my major, and I was like, I'm gonna go do this, because it 100% changed my life.
It gives me chills.
I don't have any symptoms of bipolar disorder, and I haven't since I was 15. And so I truly do believe, you can overcome any sort of pretty stark diagnosis possible.
That's fascinating. It's just, I don't know. Brain, it's like I said to her earlier, like, the brain is basically like the last frontier of healthcare, because it's just something like we just don't dive into. You're, like you said, you're willing to go to the doctor and get your ankle looked at, but not your brain. So, okay. So what we typically do on this, because we're gonna test your brain on this one. We'll test how fast you are, as we sit here casually with our legs crossed. Okay. So we always ask everybody, who are the 3 people that you would love to have dinner with, dead or alive?
Ooh, geez. I would say Jesus at first, because that just would be kind of cool. I got a lot of questions for the big man there. I think it'd be pretty cool to have dinner with my grandparents again on my dad's side. They're like my besties. My grandmother was like my angel, so I'd love to reconnect with her. And I'd love to have dinner with you, Amy.
Well, I mean, we can
have a great time.
We can make that
We would have a great freaking time together.
We've been known to have a good time together. Okay, and the last one, because we are a sports company, last night's game. If you were a boxer or a baseball player, you'd have a song that you walked out to. You'd have a walkout song. What is like Rachel's hype song? Like, you're getting ready to go into battle, or you've had a bad day, or whatever that might be. Might be even like your getting ready song to like go out. What is this, like, that song that you just tune into?
Gosh, I'm just such like a ever evolving. I like to switch it up. I like options.
Okay, so can you give us some options?
And it would be off of like what my vibe is, but probably some sort of like hype song. It's probably like a little bit like ghetto with a little bit of like, pop to it.
Okay.
I'm not really thinking.
Who are we thinking is like, that would be like?
Like, I'm thinking of the wedding we were just all at the other day, and
I mean, there was definitely some back that ass up at that wedding.
What's actually funny? I would actually say my husband's favorite song is what I would pick right now. It's called "I Look Good" by Charlie Boy, and only because it's so much fun.
Okay.
We have a really great time when that song comes on. So
I Look Good. We're gonna go with that.
Shout out "I Look Good."
That one's for you. All right. So adding that, I keep threading. I'm making a playlist of all these hype songs, because I have a morning jams playlist that, like, sometimes you wake up in the morning and you just need that, like, and half the time in our house, like, Rory picks like Jailhouse Rock or something very odd, but I can add that one to that. Is it appropriate for children?
Actually, yes, we listened to it with my son, Jordan. And so we would not play it if he couldn't listen to it.
Okay. Adding it to the list. Yeah. Well, thank you, friend. Thanks. Okay, tell people where they can find you, where they can find Braincode, like all the things.
Yeah, I mean, I love educating people. It's one of my number one passions, truly. Just, I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, what the heck is brain mapping and neurofeedback? So come chat with us. Like, I'm so happy taking 30 minutes to talk to you more thoroughly through it and learn about you and learn about your goals. Easiest way, truly, I mean, anything, Braincode Centers. We have a handle at Instagram if you want to look at some brain maps on our website, braincodecenters.com. Those are probably the easiest ways.
That's awesome. And you have 2 locations in Denver, 1 in Dallas.
We have a handful in Denver.
Okay.
Yes, there's a couple more offhands, but 2 main ones, and then 1 in Dallas, and then maybe 1 in Tulsa. We'll see.
We'll see. Soon in the country.
Yeah. We have remote options too. So
Okay.
people can train remotely. That's a different conversation, but yes.
Okay, well, either way, find them at Braincode Centers. And if you need something, shout. I can always connect you as well. So cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.